What has been happening as far as the state of the nation is concerned. In studio, I'm already joined by Dr. Isaac Hassan, leadership and governance expert. Asante sana for getting time this morning. And as well, Arnold Maliba, head of policy and public affairs at the ruling UDA party. Today on the papers, the Standard newspaper, Mangu Alliance and Maryhill top in KCSE, the nation record smashers. Evidently, of course, just highlighting the results that were announced by the Ministry of Education yesterday. And just to begin with you, Dr. Isaac, at least you are a lecturer at the university. So,
my university.
So, of course, with that makes you, or this actually touches you directly, because these are people who come to you after high schools. How do you react to the KCSE 2024 results?
I think, good morning, everybody. I think traditionally, every year, every end of the year, we have results of candidates who have sat for Kenya National Examination in every high school. And these are transitioning students into national universities and private universities. Therefore, academically, it is something that has been a tradition of every nation for us to have our children go through the process of learning. When it comes to the Kenya National Examination Council examination results that was announced just in this week, this time around, I didn't see a lot of excitement with the results being read, and even in social media, there's a lot of, dormancy in terms of reacting to or critiquing the results outcome or the schools that have gone through the examination and their results were announced. Even the CS has not been hyped a lot in terms of the content of the whole examination. Meaning then, I think we had proper examination procedures that has been adhered to. Irregularities were very minimal, meaning then quite a number of students will going to migrate to either TVET, vocational training institutions, or to the universities to undergo their undergraduate courses. So I think generally we will have a lot of students who will be waiting to be placed in the universities. I know the public universities will have put a cut-off of 504, meaning C plus with a 504, meaning then there are quite a number of C pluses who are qualified to join the university but will not benefit from the public universities. I think the government must lower that, because it's very important for every child who has undergone a process of academia to migrate to tertiary institutions so that they are able to get the relevant skills needed for their manpower and of course their livelihood, which most people do go to universities or technical vocational schools to make or to earn a living.
Arnold Maliba, this is the largest number of candidates in 4 years that have sat for KCSE, 962,000. However, at least 50% of the candidates who sat for the exam scored D and below. And the number of candidates who scored C plus and above who qualify for direct entry into university stand at 246,391, which translates to 25% only. Is it high time we lower that, even as Dr. here is proposing?
Well, there's the global standard and how people then transition going forward. I would say that we're improving. The transition is still, you say it's lesser than agreed. Elsewhere, I'm told, is actually 60% transition to university and college. But in our instance, even at 25, I think we've actually made a little bit of progress. The numbers also, like you've said, have slightly, or rather marginally gone higher. So it's incremental. It's just important to remember that this is the fourth last, I don't know whether that is proper English, it's the fourth last KCSE. We have got 3 more KCSEs to go. That is the Form 4 for this year, next year, and then
2027.
Then the 2027 team, and that will actually be all with KCSE as we know it. So of course probably that explains why there might be lesser pomp around it as we move on properly on to CBC, because I think from 2028 then properly we will actually be working on, or rather we will actually have transitioned fully into CBC. Of course with lesser focus, it means that a little bit of things have changed. The traditional problems were still there. The NEC portal going down, I think it's something that we literally never get around it. Whether it's a contingency issue, because literally, I think you guys have always reported that after as parents rush into actually, whether it is the USSD, whether it's the online platform, it always collapses. So it's one of those things I think NEC has never been prepared for, and somebody has never called them out for it. We can't have that repeatedly. Every single year when we have got an exam, their system will always collapse. Do we really have to keep on making news on that? And how big would it be for them, for example, to actually just have a redundancy measure, make up a system that is actually robust enough to deal with that? It's unnecessary for a country like Kenya, respected for its ICT and technology, to always have the same thing.
Could it be a tactic for them to maybe make more money from the telcos, especially considering each SMS will cost at least 25 or 30 shillings? So if you try, it fails to, of course, give you the results, you have to retry again. Could it be a strategy of them making more money
that, by the way,
this period?
That, by the way, should be an item that is isolated, and the editorial boards in this country also really need to actually just do a focus on that. But then you can actually run a comparison. Last year we had a similar problem. This year we've got a similar problem. And the ministry, or rather NEC, never comes up to actually speak about what really happens. We can't literally keep on having such. It looks like it's a small thing. It's normally a small inconvenience for 1 day or 2. But no, we can't keep on going in that direction. I think that those small things, how do you make a society better? It's about those small things, by the way. Now that there are no major complaints. Of course, a few schools say that they still have got their results withheld. Over time, of course, we're going to see stakeholders coming up and speaking. It was a little bit late. Prof spoke about C+ with the 504. Probably he might need to actually just go back and qualify that, or rather explain that, so that then people do understand. Because ordinarily, you know, the way we are used to this country, even the way you read it was that people with C+ and above qualify for direct entry. But then Prof put in a rider, so he might actually, would it be good that he actually says,
no,
what 504 means?
No, I think it means that there is a cutoff in terms of getting placement in the public universities. Meaning then, you may be qualified to enter other universities, but you are not qualified to benefit from the public university package. So that is where the challenge is. The
reason why I actually told him to do that is that if the policy allows, we must actually have a standard policy. Otherwise, that would be discrimination, and they would be inviting court battles. Because that's exactly where we are headed. I can't by policy be allowed to actually be able to join university, but then you say, that actually then invites court action. The
points that are to be met.
Yeah.
And Dr. the biggest question again will be on the whole issue of funding. Because I understand much as, yes, you've qualified to join universities, there is the banding, or it's not yet clear on which approach will be taken as far as financing their higher education. Actually, these higher education institutions will be. So is it so far clear on what really is going to happen? Will parents pay the school fees, or will the government pay for those who have qualified, the 25% with C+ and above?
Ordinarily, the government is supposed to provide an opportunity for people to get access the educational fund loan, which has been traditionally
that is help.
In existence, help for so long. This system has been changed recently, and there were already challenges with the existing students who are already in the campus. With the new ones coming on board, the placement formulas, probably we need to be told how best they will want to address again with minimal challenges. not to face similar to the one we faced in 2024. Because you remember the discussion of education model, funding university model has been an issue from the time the new model was introduced. There are issues related to how to identify who are the most poor ones among the society. Selection criteria for the beneficiaries has been a big issue from the time it has been initiated.
So that means testing is what should be addressed.
Absolutely. And therefore, I tend to think this is the time that the government must look into a clear picture of how best students will go into smoothly access those funds so that they are able to go to the university. By the way, if a challenge exists in a system, as my friend Maliba has already put it, systems are things that can be adjusted. And because there are things that can sometimes disappoint you, there are things that you must have a backup to address some of the issues. Like the way you have just mentioned very clearly that the SMS in accessing the system of result had a lot of pros and cons. The advantage is that quite a number of students were able to get their results within the first, shortest time possible. But the majority of the students could only access their results after they have repeatedly sent those messages for more than 10 times. And that means then, I think it is high time for NEC to return that money to individual beneficiary, because once you make one slot of request and you have paid for it, subsequent requests should not be charged, because that is fraud actually. Fraud can happen in many ways. So clearly there is an indication that the more you send the SMSs, the more you are charged for that particular SMS. But now you are paying for the same service 3 times, 4 times, 5 times more than what you are supposed to get it with. And therefore, I think for those who have applied more than once and they have been charged, modalities of returning their money should be also put in place so that we do not have people who con Kenyans when they know their system does not operate effectively. And the one thing that we need to address is that it's not very difficult to know who has paid, who has sent SMSs several times and made payment. So Safaricom should actually facilitate the process of returning those money. Because look at how many, we have over 900,000 students. All of them have accessed, and 25. How much that money will be? They're making billions. And this amount of money is coming from Kenyans who are ordinarily, when you look at their background, they are poor. They can't even pay for their university. And yet you have made collections of a lot of money to the extent that now you have taken their money. They get a result which we can even wait and go to the institution and get. But because you have initiated that process and you want to make it efficient for the student to access their result as early as possible, then you should also have a system that will go into control the same.
Maliba, on the whole issue of funding of the higher education, especially now the results are out, but the major concerns is, even if you have an A, it's not like the previous system where you'll be fully, or at least funded to some extent, let's say 80%. Now, parents are scratching their heads of what next. Is there a clear approach to this?
I think for most of last year, I ran a students program, a university students program at the party. We called it the UDA Comrades chapter. And this issue kept on coming on. But first and foremost, let's start from this point. The court has actually made a ruling on it. The court pronounced itself on that particular process. So as it is, that new funding model actually is on the coolers until further notice. Secondly, there is the presidential task force that was actually put in place. So at the moment,
what is being used is the previous one?
I don't know as yet, because we've not had an intake since the courts pronounced themselves. But I'm so sure that the Higher Education Loans Board, or HEF now, has actually worked out a modality to ensure that students can be worked on. But
are these things actually that the Cabinet Secretary, even while releasing the results, should actually talk about?
It's important to talk about that. Of course, conceptually, the new funding model was supposed to actually bring in a little bit of equity, to ensure that things are done well, and two, to ensure that funding is sufficient. Because you will realize that in some instances, we've not reviewed the funding to universities for some universities and some other courses for the last 15, 20 years, even though the cost of life has actually gone higher. So we have universities, we're talking about public universities, that are simply closing with a debt burden of about 67 billion shillings. So that was actually the route. This was supposed to be worked out. But as Kenyan stuff actually happens, is that sometimes we complicate stuff a lot. Allow me to actually just pass you through a number of things. For example, what is the police uniform? We changed the police uniform, reverted to the older one, and then came up with a new one. So sometimes the way we make changes, even if it's meant to actually work well, we make a problem. Like today, I can tell you, you probably, Chacha, do not know which one is the official and real police uniform.
In fact, President Ruto announced that in the modernization of the police, from 20 billion, the initial amount, it has now risen to 28 billion Kenya shillings.
So that is a problem. The same thing, when it's systemic changes, the truth is, like the changes we are doing on the NHIF to actually bring in the Social Health Authority. Again, when we are making changes, we complicate stuff unnecessarily, and as a society, we love things to be done incrementally. That is the same problem that, of course, faced the new funding model, that again, it looked like it was too complex. We came up with bans, there was not proper communication around it, even though, if you look at it conceptually, it means well, and it's supposed to, number one, ensure that we do not compromise on the quality of education. So that is something that we need to work around. But then, so today you can't do so much because the courts have already put it on the cooler, and it will be important that we also talk about it before this new, the class that now is looking at going to the university is ready for it. Allow me to
now welcome Nordin Kagai, advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Thank you so much for getting time. And we're focusing on, yes, the results are out, KCSE results. However, the whole question of how do they get to these universities? The court put brakes on the new university funding model. The government has not communicated on what happens to those who are already in universities, but at least they had already joined these universities. Now, for the 25% who have qualified to join universities in this case, the CS did not talk about that. Is it a concern? What happens in this case? Are we in a crisis?
You know, first and foremost, the law abhors a vacuum. You just asked him a question. The reality is that we revert back to the law that was before this. The law abhors a vacuum. So there is no crisis per se, because at the end of the day, there was a law before they came up with this new funding model. The sad reality is that, as you rightfully say, the CS yesterday failed to make any pronouncement on the same. Maybe they still have to have a cabinet meeting on the same. But before I say that, allow me to congratulate those who have passed the examinations yesterday, and those who have more than 50% have actually gotten D+ and below. You know, people used to say that your grades determine your future. Allow me to tell them that's not the case, because with that D, you have a CS in government at the end of the day. So they can still make something out of their lives, you know.
We're also talking about...
Chacha, just before you go so far, he's talking about the exception rather than the norm. It's important to actually say that we are still a merit-based society, and Nordin is seated here because he passed his exams and he actually did law. He went to Kenya School of Law, did the advocates training.
But he's trying to give them hope.
This hope is not a strategy.
Let me tell you something. You see, all I'm trying to say is that your life does not start and end with your results. That's the truth of the matter. Because our education model has always been pro-exams. You know, I remember when I was doing my KCPE, my teachers used to tell us, what you get in that examination determines your future. You see, so if someone believed that and they failed, and they never got a second chance in high school and changed their fortunes, never went to secondary school, of course, at the end of the day, their life ends there. It means saying that you have a CS with a D, I'm just being mischievous at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, the truth of the matter is that we as a society, and those in high offices, they try to propel those who, you know, never passed examinations. So at the end of the day, I believe that as we move forward, the issue of the funding model has to be sorted out.
Wakili, before you came in, we were actually discussing about the technical hitches that usually occur after the release of these exams. And Dr. Isaac here has termed it as a fraud, especially where parents or students have to send more SMSs to get the results, even 5 times, 6 times. And of course, each SMS, there are some costs implications. Is it high time this is looked into? And in fact, these telcos refund Kenyans' parents' money?
You see, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere called us a capitalist society, a man-eat-man society. It's not a lie, because what he says is very true. Because why must you spend money to get those results at the end of the day? And as you rightfully say, you send 5 SMSs at the end of the day before one comes to you. And some even, they never get the results. I have a friend of mine, I don't want to mention his name here. We do attend these panels with him. He told me yesterday that until today, he's waiting for his results. That was in 2006. They never came, but they spent money via SMS. So, you know, sometimes we need to look into such things. Back in the day, they used to placate those things on notice boards in your primary schools. But there are those who study far. Maybe you study in Wajir and you live in Nairobi, so it's going to be difficult. But I believe we need to have a system where we make sure that that issue, as he rightfully says, comes to an end. Because what's the point of having to make business in every single thing that we do? You know, and that is why we as a country, we do not grow. Because in everything we do, be it even in politics, people look at the business aspect, you know, because we have politicians in this country who are more businessmen, who day in, day out find themselves in government, without mentioning names, because they have to leave. Their interests are protected. So as a country, we need to look forward and sort out some issues. Away from that, before we move so fast, you know, schools have opened this January. And it's very sad that this is when schools are being constructed as well, because those additional classes are being constructed right now. You talked about the issue of the funding model. They are mum about that. Why are we not talking about the classes that are being constructed right now? Where was this? Why did this money delay to be released at the end of the day? You see, we are forgetting some issues. We cannot, as a country, keep saying that. The president yesterday rightfully said that, oh, this administration has employed much than any administration. Went ahead and said that, oh, the results are good because of what they are doing. But why do they fail to forget that there are issues until today that they're not being sorted out? Why are classrooms being constructed right now? Schools have been closed for 2 months. Why was that money not released at the end of the day? They will tell us there's no money. But there was money for Grammy Awards, 500 million.
Chacha, I just needed, now that he's brought up that issue, I think as a country we really need to speak to some of these things, Chacha, seriously. Like I started with the issue on the failure of the portal and the system and the USSD. It's a repeat, let me not say NEC is a repeat offender, but we've been here for always. And somehow we've normalized it. That's one of those breaking news. The items will be about the portal collapses, the website goes down, and the USSD goes down.
So you're ready for a short commercial break. Quickly touch on, out of the classes that are to be built, it's only 3,500 that have been constructed out of 18,000.
Actually, I was going to that. I wanted
so
to respond to that.
Or 14,500 classes have not been constructed, yet these students have reported to schools. So over 1.5 million learners are now forced to occupy only 3,500 classes. Is this fair?
I think I wanted to actually, I was actually going to that, and I started with that because number one, if we can actually not put people given responsibility to act on small issues, if we cannot ask them questions on small things like the portal, like the system, are we able then to ask questions on bigger projects or something sizable as classes, for example? We cannot as a country normalize incompetence. You know, when we accept smaller things like a portal collapsing every time we do exams and then we make it normal and nobody asks questions.
So you're also faulting the ministry on the construction of the classes?
Chacha, there is no excuse on why as a country we can always be back-footed. It does not matter, by the way, Chacha. And this one should not invite a conversation of us versus them. Provision of public goods is the only reason why we look for votes, why we get to government. And once you get into government, the people you give responsibility to do that work must do the right job. Otherwise,
Chacha, I just want to react on one, Maliba, on regards to the classrooms and how Kenyans take things very light. Look at a situation where we had 2 months of holidays. The PS has not come out very clearly and saying that we are doing this, we are putting this effort,
they're
and we are
barring the
moving
media
on.
from accessing the schools.
Exactly, and it is the last day when schools are open, the PS stands, my friend Professor, comes out there saying that we are having challenges, classes are not enough, and we want to find modalities in which we can place these students to their classroom so that they learn. He did not even thought of one thing, that I don't know why sometimes we get blackouts. Look at the high schools. Almost strips, Form 1 strips are empty. There is no Form 1s in high schools. We have not thought of taking even these children there as a temporary measures in order for us to...
Allow me to cut you short. We take a break. Unfortunately, the schools that are suffering are public schools. Private schools have enough classes. We take a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll be focusing on the state of the nation, basically reviewing the events of this week. We'll be right back. Stay with us.